Welcome, travelers of the dark. Here, every story is a winding road where light dares not enter. Settle in, draw the curtains on the world outside, and prepare to hear what most would rather forget. Tonight, we dive into real stories, stories that happened to ordinary people, but left scars even time couldn't erase. I've always been the reserved type. Never needed much noise around me to feel alive. Maybe that's why I so quickly accepted an old friend's offer to stay at his cabin in Red Pine, a tiny town surrounded by thick forests deep in Maine's countryside. I needed time away from the real world. Away from the city, the honking horns, the suffocating skyscrapers, the life that seemed to crush me 1 inch more every day. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 32 years old, a financial analyst by trade, a survivor by soul. It had been months since I'd slept properly. Maybe there, among the trees, my mind could finally settle. I arrived on a Sunday evening. The sky was already bleeding into purple, and the forest shadows stretched long over the dirt road where my car jolted forward. The cabin was simple, weather-darkened wood, a small porch, a crooked chimney climbing toward the sky. No other houses nearby, at least none that I could see. I found the keys under a stone, just as agreed. When I opened the door, the smell of old wood and dust greeted me like an old acquaintance. I walked through the house quickly. Small kitchen, living room with a cold fireplace, 2 modest bedrooms, a bathroom fed by a well out back. Simple, but perfect. I unpacked without hurry, dropped my backpack on the couch, struggled to light a fire in the hearth, and made myself a simple dinner. Canned soup on an old wood stove. That night, I fell asleep early, lulled by the crackle of flames and the wind singing between the trees. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe things could get back to normal. The first 2 nights at Red Pine were peaceful. A deep silence. So deep that I found myself thinking how strange it was to hear. Absolutely nothing. No distant cars, no barking dogs, not even insects buzzing beyond the crackling wood. On the 3rd night, the silence changed. It didn't end, it changed. I was lying down, reading under the weak light of an old lamp, when I heard it, something on the porch. A creak, subtle, like the weight of a person stepping on a loose board. I stood up slowly, held my breath. The house seemed to listen with me. 3 slow steps to the front window. I peered through the curtains. Nothing. But something was wrong. I could feel it. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, a cold electric wave rushing over my skin. I closed the curtains slowly, forced myself to smile, to breathe. Maybe a raccoon, I muttered, trying to sound reasonable. I returned to the couch and turned on the old kitchen radio to drown out the uneasy silence. Static. I spun the frequency dial. Nothing but crackles and hisses. Weird. That morning, I'd easily tuned into a local country station. I forced myself to finish my book, forced myself to believe it was just nerves, a mind used to city noise adjusting to absolute silence. But later, as the night swallowed Red Pine whole, I knew. While half drifting on the armchair, I caught a glimpse, just a flash, of a dark figure standing near the trail, about 20 meters from the porch. It didn't move, it didn't hide, it just watched. The next morning, I swept the area around the house. Found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign anyone or anything had been there. Maybe it had been a dream. Maybe. But that night marked the end of my peace at Red Pine. The next night, I barely slept. Every crack of the wood, every gust of wind tapping against the windows made my body tense like a trapped animal. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a sound from the kitchen. Something metallic, like a chair scraping across the floor. I moved silently, heart pounding in my ears, grabbed an old flashlight and crept down the hall. The kitchen looked the same, but in the center of the room, there it was, one of the dining chairs, pulled out, facing the doorway, as if someone had dragged it there to sit and watch me sleep. I approached slowly, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. Nothing else, just the cold of the night and the fading smell of burnt wood from the dead fireplace. I rechecked all the doors, barred them, pushed the couch tighter against the front door, returned to the bedroom, but sleep was impossible. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting the imaginary ticking of a clock I knew didn't exist. At first light, I went outside to investigate, and that's when I saw it. 50 meters behind the cabin, where the forest grew dense like a wall, a piece of torn fabric snagged on a bush. Gray, dirty, as if ripped from old clothing. And further beyond, something worse, a wide tree trunk clawed with deep vertical scratches, not from an animal. Too high, too deliberate, human, or almost human. I returned to the cabin with shallow breath, feeling invisible eyes trailing me from the trees. I made myself a promise, one more night, just one more. Then I would leave at dawn. The problem is, at night, promises are easy to break. It was close to midnight. The dead fireplace threw long shadows on the walls. The wind howled outside, but it wasn't just the wind. I heard it, clearly. Footsteps, on the porch, heavy, slow, and then more. Several. The wooden boards groaned under their weight. They moved side to side, encircling. I held my breath, grabbed the old pocket knife from my backpack, a sad joke against whatever was out there. The front doorknob rattled, trembling, insistent. I didn't wait. I shoved the couch against the door with my shoulder. Through the window, I saw them. 3, maybe 4 figures. Tall, wearing dark clothes. Faces hidden under hoods or makeshift masks. One approached the window and pressed its face against the glass. Even with the little light, I could see empty eyes, expressionless, and a smile. A slow, wide smile. A smile that said, "We already won." The house shuddered. Someone kicked the back door, once, twice. I ran to the bedroom, locked the door, shoved the dresser against it. Footsteps inside the cabin now, heavy, furniture crashing, boots pounding the wood floors. No choice. I hurled the bedside lamp through the bedroom window, shards exploding into the night. I jumped through, landing hard on my shoulder, pain shooting through my arm. I didn't look back. I ran. Into the woods, into the darkness, branches cutting my face, rocks shredding my legs. Behind me, shouts, not words, grunts, growls. They were chasing, no idea where I was going. Just away. I stumbled, fell hard, split my knee open on a branch, got up, limping, bleeding. Gunshots echoed. Not aimed at me, warning shots. They were calling each other. I hid behind a fallen log, covered my mouth with my hand, silencing my ragged breathing. I stayed there, frozen, for hours, until the sky began to lighten, until the crows started cawing again. Only then, with my body battered and fear clinging to me like filth, I dared to move and walked away from the cabin, walked away from them. If walking away was even possible, I don't really remember how I got out of the woods that morning. Everything blurred, dreamlike, but the fear The fear stuck. I wandered aimlessly for hours. The forest swallowed the light. Every crack of a twig made my chest seize. Eventually, I stumbled onto the dirt road, and further down, a battered pickup truck sat idling. A farmer. He opened the door without a word, staring at my torn clothes, my hollowed eyes. I climbed in without asking. He drove, didn't say a word, dropped me off in a neighboring town. A place with noise, smells, people. People who would never know, could never know what waited in Red Pines woods. I checked into a cheap motel, barricaded the door, closed the curtains, shoved a dresser against the entrance, called my friend. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. The days passed. No news, no explanations. I never went back for my things. Red Pine became just a name I refused to say aloud. Sometimes, while waiting for an elevator or staring out a city window, I feel it again. That presence. Sometimes I catch glimpses of shadows reflected in store windows. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night, sure I heard footsteps outside my door. I don't know if they followed me. I don't know if I'll ever really escape. But once you've felt real fear, the primal kind, it never leaves you. It lives inside you. It breathes through you. It watches you while you try to pretend you're safe. The silence at Red Pine never ends. My name is Kyle Murphy. I'm 26 years old, and honestly, I've never been particularly good at making smart choices. Last October, after losing my restaurant job and falling 2 months behind on rent, I took the first job I could find, a night shift guard position at a storage complex on the outskirts of Waverly, a small forgotten town in Indiana. The ad said something like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. Easy work, little activity, perfect for someone looking to earn without stress. Given the money they offered, more than I'd seen in a month, I would have accepted anything. Even if deep down some part of me screamed that there was nothing normal about that offer. Waverly Storage was a cluster of old warehouses surrounded by rusted barbed wire, planted in the middle of nowhere. No houses nearby, no noise except for the wind cutting across the dry fields. On my first night, or technically nightfall, a man in a wrinkled suit met me at the gate. He introduced himself only as Mr. Miller. "Your job is simple, Kyle," he said, handing me a rusty key ring and a walkie-talkie. "Walk the aisles once an hour. Make sure the locks are intact. If you hear or see anything strange, ignore it. Just stay until sunrise." I chuckled, thinking it was a weird attempt at a scare tactic. He didn't laugh back. He just turned and disappeared into the dark. The place was bigger than I expected. 8 long corridors of identical storage units, all numbered 1 through 48. Cracked floors, metal walls stained with rust. The little office where I was supposed to stay was more like a security booth. A tiny room with an old tube TV linked to grainy security cameras, and a battered armchair that looked as uncomfortable as it felt. My shift started, and on that first night, all I felt was relief. Easy money, way too easy. At 11 p.m., I did my first round. The weak flashlights barely lit a few feet ahead. The wind whistled between the metal buildings, making the doors shudder every now and then. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that justified the generous paycheck. I returned to the booth, turned on the walkie-talkie, and stared at the trembling images on the monitors. Every now and then, the static crackling from the screens filled the booth with a weird kind of tension. But nothing else. At least, not yet. The second round was uneventful. Nothing wrong, except for the biting cold and the kind of silence that seemed to dig into your bones. The locks were intact. The floors creaked beneath my steps, mocking me with their hollow echoes. On my way back to the booth, I noticed how the wind seemed to have a voice. It blew in uneven bursts, sometimes moaning, sometimes whispering words I couldn't quite catch. I shook my head, laughing at myself. You're getting paranoid, Kyle. Just the wind. Just the damned wind. Around 1:15 a.m., as I fought sleep in that awful chair, one of the monitors glitched. A quick flicker. Half a second, maybe less. Enough to make me sit upright. It was the camera facing Corridor 3. One of the units, number 12, if I remembered right, seemed open. Not wide open, but cracked. A thin gap, like someone or something had pulled it ajar. My fingers tightened around the walkie-talkie. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it, just staying put until dawn. But Mr. Miller's voice echoed in my head. Walk the aisles. Check the locks. I sighed, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped into the night. The walk to Corridor 3 felt longer than before. Each step sounded too loud. Every shadow seemed to twitch in the corners of my eyes. When I rounded the bend, the corridor stretched out under the pale light of the moon. And there it was. The door to Unit 12, slightly open. Swaying lightly in the breeze, I swallowed hard. Approaching carefully, I nudged the door with the tip of the flashlight. It creaked, slow and painful. The beam of light sliced through the darkness inside, revealing only dust and stacked boxes. No signs of intrusion, no signs of life. And yet, something crawled up my spine. Something wasn't right, not with what I saw, but with what I felt. The air inside seemed heavier, denser, alive. I pulled the door closed, locked it, and mentally noted to tell Mr. Miller later. I returned to the booth, trying to shake off the feeling that something, or someone, was still watching me from the dark. Around 3 a.m., the place changed. I don't know how else to describe it. The wind no longer howled. It vibrated deep and low through the ground beneath my boots. The cameras began to fail, one after the other. First Corridor 5, then 2, then 7. The screens glitched as if invisible hands were yanking at the cables, and when the images steadied, little details were wrong. Doors that had been closed were now cracked open. Shadows where no shadows should have been. The walkie-talkie crackled with strange static, almost like breathing noises, faint but steady. I tried to rationalize. Faulty wiring, strong winds, a tired brain filling in the blanks. But then I heard it. Outside. Not the wind, not a banging door. Footsteps, human footsteps, slow, sliding, circling the booth. I shot upright, nearly tripping over the cords. Another noise, a heavy thud against the side wall. The booth shook. Another bang from the opposite side. Glass trembling, doors groaning. I grabbed the flashlight, the walkie-talkie, the useless little knife I'd brought, killed the booth lights to hide my position, tried to spot anything on the monitors. Nothing, only frozen, trembling images, but I knew. They were out there, inside already. Maybe they knew I had figured it out. Or maybe that was the plan. The first blow hit so hard it shook the whole structure. I recoiled, nearly falling. Another impact. Stronger. No time to think. I ripped the monitor's power cable from the wall, grabbed the master key, and bolted from the booth into the freezing night. The air smelled of rust, sweat, and something else. Something metallic. I ran through the aisles, flashlight beam trembling across numbered doors. Behind me, footsteps. Lots of them. running now. Low growls echoed behind. Not words, animalistic grunts. I turned down corridor 4, hid between 2 storage units, fighting to hold my breath. Saw shadows passing under the flickering lights. Tall, thin, more than I could fight. Way more. I needed to get to the front gate. Fast. Peeking out. I froze. They were there. Waiting. Just staring. Like wolves at the edge of a slaughterhouse. I bolted the other way. Corridor 8, Unit 46 had a back exit into the overgrown fields. I fumbled the master key into the lock, hands slick with sweat. Footsteps pounded closer. I heard whispers. Low, garbled, laughter. The lock turned. I shoved the door open and slammed it shut behind me. Inside the unit, it was even colder, even darker. Old boxes, tools rusting away, mildewed fabric hanging like rotting curtains. And somewhere inside, breathing, heavy, close, not mine, not theirs, something else. I never saw what it was. Maybe that was for the best. I ran through the junk, kicking over boxes, shredding my hands on rusted edges until I found another door. A service exit. Broke the handle, fell into the night, ran without direction. Branches whipping my face, thorns tearing my arms, until the fields swallowed me, and they let me go. Or maybe they just lost interest. Hours later, maybe longer, I found the main road. A trucker picked me up, never asked questions, took me back to town. I quit that same day, never once looked back. I still don't sleep well. Every time I close my eyes, I see endless corridors, half-open doors, breathing static on dead screens, footsteps sliding just beyond the edge of vision. Waverly Storage is still there, still hiring, still offering easy money. But now I know the truth. Some places, the night doesn't just hold darkness, it holds what hunts in the darkness. And sometimes, when you think you're the watcher, you're the one being watched. My name is Eric Lawson. I'm 23 years old, and looking back, I realize I was a fool back then. Last July, I was trying to get home after a music festival deep in Missouri's countryside. My car broke down, phone dead, no bus stops nearby. Just a long, cracked road stretching into endless forests on both sides. The sun was already sinking when I started walking, thumb stuck out. The universal signal for needing a ride. For a long while, nobody passed. Only the sound of my footsteps on the asphalt. Only the suffocating heat rising in shimmering waves from the road. When the car appeared, an old grey sedan, clean but worn, I almost laughed in relief. It slowed down. The window rolled down. The driver was a man in his 50s, wide face, easy smile. He wore a faded dress shirt buttoned all the way up. "Car trouble?" he asked, voice slow and friendly. I nodded, explaining briefly. He just waved a hand as if saying, "No problem. Hop in. I'm heading toward Hannibal. I can drop you off close to town." Without thinking much, because it was either this or be alone in the dark, I opened the passenger door and climbed in. Inside, the air was freezing, like the AC had been blasting on high for hours. The smell was strong too, a mix of old leather and something metallic. Still better than being stranded on an empty road. Or so I thought. We made small talk at first. He asked where I was coming from, where I was headed, if anyone was expecting me. I answered casually. Nothing seemed too strange. At first. Then the questions shifted. "Do you live alone? Got any family nearby? Anyone who would miss you if you disappeared?" His tone was calm, almost friendly, but the words stuck in my mind like barbed hooks. I tried to laugh it off, changing the subject, talking about the heat. He smiled, didn't answer, just stared at the road, his grin frozen in place. The car's radio was on, but there was no music, just a low, constant static. I glanced discreetly at the door. No handle on my side, just an empty, torn-out hole where it should have been. My stomach twisted. I patted my pocket. No phone, no signal, no help, just me, him, and miles of deserted road. The first truly strange thing, besides the missing handle, was the direction he took. The route to Hannibal was a straight shot down Highway 36. But after about 15 minutes, he made a left onto a much smaller road, cracked, overgrown, swallowed by trees. No signs, no lights, just a dark corridor getting narrower with every mile. "You sure this is the way?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. His smile didn't falter. "Shortcut," he said, "just a little more woods. Then we'll be back on the main road." The way he said it, like he was savoring the words. I swallowed hard and looked around. Nothing but darkness pressing in from all sides. No houses, no gas stations, no witnesses. Just us and that narrowing road. I tried to stay calm. I asked his name. "You can call me Jim," he said after a long pause. The way he said "you can" unsettled me, like the name was a favor, a lie meant to soothe. The radio kept buzzing with that low static, but sometimes I swore I heard something hidden in it. Whispers, words I couldn't quite make out, like someone muttering between the cracks of a broken transmission. I tightened every muscle in my body without moving. If I showed fear, it would be worse. I had to wait, watch, find an opening. That's when I saw it, and everything inside me froze. On the dashboard, where the glove box should have been, was something else. Heavy duct tape, a pair of handcuffs, and a knife. Its blade stained, not with rust, but something darker. This wasn't just a car. This wasn't just a man, and I was no longer just a passenger. I was prey. The silence inside the car was suffocating now. Only the hum of the engine, only the crackling static. The road narrowed into a tunnel of twisted trees. Each mile felt like a door locking behind me. Jim drove with impossible calm, hands steady, eyes locked ahead, as if he'd taken this route many times, as if he knew exactly where he was going. I scanned the car again, desperate. Then I spotted it, a small emergency glass breaker, tossed on the floor between my feet, almost invisible against the dirty carpet. Had it fallen there? Had it been left as bait? Sweat trickled down my back. My hands shook slightly. My heartbeat thudded so loud it felt like he must hear it. I needed a plan. I needed a moment. "Sorry, man," I said, forcing a cough. "Could we stop for a minute? I'm feeling sick. Maybe the heat, the festival? I don't know." My voice trembled more than I wanted. He turned his head toward me for the first time in minutes, still smiling, always smiling. "Feeling short of breath," he said, almost pleased. I nodded, pressing a hand against my chest. "All right," he said, "we'll stop." But the way he said it, it wasn't kindness. It was anticipation. The car slowed down, pulled onto a dirt clearing surrounded by thick woods. No lights, no homes, nowhere to run. He cut the engine, turned to face me fully. His smile stretched unnaturally wide, and he held out his hand as if inviting me to a dance. "Let's get some fresh air, partner," he said, hand open, knife still gleaming on the dashboard. The glass breaker still tucked under my leg. One chance, maybe my last. He opened the driver's door. The creaking hinge screamed into the night. Cold air flooded the car. He stepped out, calm, patient, as if he had all the time in the world. He walked slowly around the front of the car, whistling, low, off-key, getting closer, closer. The moment he grabbed the door handle, I moved. I smashed the glass with the emergency tool. The window exploded outward. Shards rained everywhere. I threw myself through the jagged hole, slicing my arms, my legs, but didn't stop. I hit the ground hard, gasped, ran. Behind me, shouts, not words, growls, heavy boots pounding the ground. Branches whipped my face, thorns tore at my skin. But I ran. I ran like my life depended on it, because it did. The sounds behind me grew fainter, fainter, until nothing but the wind roared in my ears. Still, I didn't stop. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until the world blurred into spinning darkness. I don't know how long I lay there in the cold, muddy woods. Minutes, hours, it didn't matter. Only the silence mattered, only survival. Eventually, I staggered back to the road, bleeding, barefoot, alive. I found a gas station, a clerk who looked at me like I was already dead. He called the police, an ambulance. They asked questions. I told them everything. Described Jim, the car, the road. But the shortcut he took, they never found it. No clearing, no side road, nothing. They gave me stitches, a pamphlet on trauma counseling, sent me back into the world. I kept moving, kept breathing. But I never truly came back. Even now, when I drive at night, headlights appear behind me and my stomach drops. Even now, I sometimes hear static on the radio and whispers hidden inside it. Even now, in dreams and memories, I see a grinning man in a battered sedan, waiting, whistling, because on the open road, sometimes you don't just catch a ride. Sometimes you get taken. My name is Hannah Whitmore. I've been working as a 911 operator for 5 years, and I've learned night is always worse. Most of the calls we get after midnight involve the kinds of things daylight tries to hide: domestic violence, suicide attempts, terrible accidents. But on the night of March 14th, I got a call that I still can't explain. It was a little after 2:45 a.m. The shift was dead quiet, just the hum of the old computers and the occasional creak of the office chairs. That's when line 7 lit up. An anonymous call. I answered like protocol. 911, what's your emergency? For a second, there was only static. Then, a child's voice, low, barely a whisper. Someone's in here. My heart skipped. What's your name? Where are you? More static. I can't leave. He's watching me. I felt my stomach turn cold. I tried tracing the call in the system, and that's when things went wrong. The call's origin showed up as our own address, the Waverly Emergency Dispatch Center, Line 7, a terminal that, according to internal records, had been deactivated 3 years ago. I kept my voice steady. Are you inside the center? Can you tell me which room you're in? Silence, only the crackling noise. Then a muffled sound, like fingers scratching a microphone, and another whisper. He knows you're listening. The line cut out. Protocol said to immediately investigate any anomalies. I called one of the security guards, told him quickly. He just frowned. The old phone system bugs out sometimes, he said, brushing it off. But if you want, I'll go check. He grabbed a flashlight and headed down the hallway toward the old section, the part abandoned after the last renovation. I watched him on the security monitors. He turned the corner, vanished off screen. 2 minutes, 5, 10, nothing. I tried radioing him. No answer. I stood up, heart hammering. I walked into the main hallway. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The doors to the abandoned offices hung slightly open, spilling long shadows across the tile floor. I called his name. Nothing. That's when I saw it. On the floor, right outside room 3, his radio lying discarded, and scrolled into the dust on the broken glass door. A message. Now he sees you too. I ran. I ran out of the center without looking back, and I never went back. Some say it was a glitch in the system. Others think it was just a sick prank. But I know what I heard. If you ever work late at night in an empty building, pay attention to the old phone lines. Some calls don't come from outside. My name is Kyle. I'm 24 years old, and everything I'm about to tell you happened on what was supposed to be an ordinary weekend. One of those when you just want to disconnect from the world and breathe. We rented an old country house in Vermont. Me, Jason, Emma, and Laura. Longtime friends, each carrying their own burdens, pretending not to. The house was old, with peeling paint, surrounded by a forest that was too quiet. Perfect for a break, we said. We arrived on a Friday night. Jason blasted music from the car. Emma snapped pictures of everything. Laura brought wine. We laughed. We talked. And for a few hours, we managed to forget the world. Saturday morning, I was the first one to wake up. I went downstairs for coffee, and something in the living room caught my attention. A rug in the middle of the floor looked out of place. Almost like someone had carefully placed it there, unlike the general messiness of the house. I stepped on it. The floor creaked, but it was a hollow sound. I called Jason. "Dude, that's where they bury the bodies." He joked, excited. We pushed the rug aside. Beneath it, a small iron lever. We pulled it. A heavy wooden hatch lifted, revealing a staircase plunging into darkness. It was cold down there. It smelled of mold, metal, and something I didn't want to name. We went down with our phone flashlights. The basement was bigger than we expected. Old objects, boxes, tools. But what froze our blood was what stood at the center. A rusty iron chair with leather straps. Facing it, an old camera mounted on a tripod. The lens stared at us. "Is this some kind of prank? Someone set this up?" Laura asked, her voice trembling. Behind the chair, a narrow passage had been carved into the stone wall. A tunnel. It stretched into complete darkness. "We're not going in there," Emma said. No one argued. That's when we heard it. A low, muffled sound, like a distant moan. We froze. "You guys heard that?" Jason whispered. The sound came again, stronger this time. A hoarse scream coming from deep inside the tunnel. Someone, or something, was down there, and it was getting closer. We didn't wait. We ran, scrambled up the stairs, slammed the hatch shut, piled chairs and boxes on top. We called the police. It took them hours to arrive. When we explained, they exchanged quick glances, like they'd heard crazy tourist stories before. Still, they went down. 20 minutes later, they returned. One of the officers looked pale. They confirmed the tunnel, confirmed the camera. At the end of the underground corridor, there was a small room. Old recording equipment, stains on the floor, hooks on the walls, but no person, no soul. They told us to leave immediately, that the property had changed owners many times, and that we might be messing with something too old to understand. We left that evening, silent. The house faded behind us. Hours later, already at a motel, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. It was a video. It showed the four of us descending into the basement. The image was grainy, old-looking, like it came from an old VHS tape, but it captured exactly what had happened. Seconds before, the screams started, as if someone had been recording before we even went down. My name is Nate. I'm 27 years old and a freelance video editor. What I'm about to tell you wasn't part of any script. No reenactments. It was supposed to be just another recording for our urban exploration channel. The idea was simple. Document our entry into an abandoned nuclear silo hidden deep in Oregon's Umpqua National Forest. The place didn't appear on any official maps, but an anonymous source sent us coordinates claiming the site had been active until the 1990s and that, according to them, some lights still turn on. There were 3 of us, me, Max, and Dylan. We had already broken into hospitals, train stations, industrial ruins. None of that prepared us for what we found at Silo 17. We reached the site after nearly a 2-hour hike through the forest. The silo was a concrete dome partially swallowed by moss and vegetation. The main entrance was welded shut, but we found a side hatch with a broken lock. Max forced it open with a crowbar. The metal groaned loudly. A smell of rust and stagnation hit us immediately. Natural light disappeared by the second step of the staircase. We descended with flashlights and chest-mounted cameras. Dylan narrated everything for the video. Nervous laughter, jokes about radiation. The first floor was what we expected. Rooms with broken panels, scattered documents, old coffee makers covered in dust. But something felt off. The air was too clean. No mold, no decay. We found a steel spiral staircase leading down further. Dylan, excited, took the lead. The beast's heart, he said. The second level felt like a maze of corridors with numbered doors. Some locked, others open. In one room, we found a projector that still worked. Max, on impulse, turned it on. The shaky image showed a white room with a gurney in the center. No sound, but the footage appeared to be live. "Is this live?" I asked. Dylan laughed. "No way. It's probably a loop tape." In the corner of the video, an IV tube swayed subtly, as if something had just moved past it. We turned it off. We continued exploring to the 3rd level. Down there, the radio signal disappeared. Our flashlights seemed dimmer. We passed a corridor with observation windows. Behind the glass, 3 beds with restraint straps. One of them overturned. The straps slashed. Max didn't want to go any further, asked to turn back. Dylan insisted. They argued. I stood between them. That's when we heard the voice. Low, faint, coming from a ceiling speaker. Testing resumed. Sector 4 active. No one moved for a few seconds. The voice echoed through the corridors like the silo had come alive again. "That was probably just an old recording," Max said, trying to sound rational. Dylan pointed at one of the speakers. The red light beside it was lit. "There's power in here," he whispered. We walked in silence toward a steel door labeled Sector 4. The small window showed an even darker corridor with a faint blue glow at the end. It wasn't our flashlights. It was steady, pulsing. Dylan pulled the door open. There was mechanical resistance, like the system was still partially operational. When we finally forced it open, a sharp beep sounded like a short alarm, but no one appeared. We walked slowly through the new corridor. The floor was different, clean metal plates, no dust, like someone still used this path. At the end of the sector, there was a glass-walled room. Inside, a control panel was still lit. 3 black monitors. One of them flickered, then showed a static image. Then another. The 3 of us, filmed from above, at the silo entrance. "Nate, is that now?" Dylan asked. It was. We'd been watched from the very start. The second monitor turned on. A black and white view of the room with the restrained beds. Now, a figure was sitting on one. Motionless, head down. We couldn't see the face. The third monitor showed a staircase, one we didn't recall passing. In the corner of the screen, red letters flashed. "Access blocked. Sub-level 5. "There's more below?" Max asked. Dylan grinned. "Of course there is." Max refused to continue, stayed behind, too scared to go further. Dylan and I followed the route leading down. With every flight of stairs, the air grew heavier. The ambient sound changed. It was like being underground, but inside something living. We reached a door with a digital panel. To our surprise, the light turned green when Dylan approached. It clicked open. Inside wasn't a room. It was an elevator, and it was already coming up. The panel above the elevator door showed a countdown. 0403. "This isn't normal," I whispered. Dylan kept filming, but his shaking hands gave away his nerves. 0201. The elevator stopped. The light inside was red, pulsing, but it was empty. Well, almost. In the corner sat a black box, about the size of an old computer monitor, with a magnetic tape slot in front. Above it, a note taped on with electrical tape. "Insert recording." "Is this some kind of terminal?" Dylan asked. The tape was on the floor. I picked it up carefully. Someone had written in red marker, "Log 05, authorized." I inserted it. The elevator light shifted to blue. The doors closed automatically. We hadn't pressed anything. It began to descend. As we went down, the elevator's internal speakers played distorted audio, fragments of a recording. "Protocol initiated. They didn't respond to testing. Memory compromised." Dylan looked at me. His expression changed. "Nate, do you remember how we got here?" "Yeah, through the hatch at the top." "Number before that. Who sent us the coordinates?" I stayed silent. I couldn't remember the source's name, not even the day I got the email. "We came because we'd already been here." The elevator stopped. The doors opened, and the first thing we saw on sublevel 5 was a recording of us, seated, strapped down, in metal chairs. Being observed by the same camera now pointed at us. No one spoke, because on the other side of the room, the me from the footage slowly raised his head and stared at us. The Dylan in the video raised his head too. Both had their eyes wide open, unblinking, as if they were awake out of obligation. The footage froze. The screen glitched, and for a second, the camera showed a third chair. Empty. But when I looked again, there was a figure seated in it. Hard to see. Like the image hadn't fully rendered, but the posture matched mine. "This is just old footage," I whispered. "Then why is the camera's reflection showing us right now?" Dylan replied. The figure moved, stood up, and walked out of frame. In the real room, a back door opened with a sharp click, the same door from the footage. Dylan ran to the terminal, tried to shut everything off. It didn't work. The elevator wouldn't respond. The tape wouldn't eject. We pushed through the back door, flashlights flickering. The next hallway was tighter, hotter. The walls had claw marks, breathing sounds, dripping. We were both gasping. But there was a third breath. Suddenly, emergency lights switched on. Red. An alarm began to sound far away. A scream. Metal scraping. We ran back, but the recording room was empty. The chairs knocked over, the elevator sealed. Only a new note on the ground. Log 06, not interrupted. Dylan pulled me aside and we found a maintenance ladder hidden behind the panel. We climbed it, skipping rungs, the sound of something following us echoing below. At the top, a grate led us to an unfamiliar hallway. The walls were marked with arrows, drawn by hand in dried blood. We followed, not sure if we were escaping or being led. The arrows led us through tight, suffocating tunnels, lower with every turn. The walls began to change. From rough concrete to some sort of metallic lining, wavy and wet to the touch. A deep hum filled the air. Dylan gripped my jacket tightly. He was shaking. We stopped in front of a door with a dark glass window. Beyond it, a cold lit room. In the center, a chair, not tied down, just waiting. The ceiling intercom crackled. Log 07, prepare for reset. Dylan backed away. This is a cycle, he murmured. We're stuck in a test. Every time we think it's the first, it's already the next. The door opened by itself. We entered. Against instinct, against panic. We needed to know. Inside, besides the chair, was a desk with a single monitor. On it, a text file scrolled like an automated journal. Subject N17, Cycle 6 complete. Data restored. Memory erased. Outside interference. Visual record preserved. Begin Cycle 7. Dylan touched the monitor. The image flickered. Then it showed, in real time, the hatch entrance. Maximum. He was there. Coming down. But we were on sublevel 5. Max never made it past level 3. The screen flashed. 3 figures appeared. Maximum. Dylan. Me. Descending again. We're being copied, I whispered. Or erased. Or tested. A metallic sound came from behind. We turned. The chair was occupied. By me. But it wasn't a recording. He was breathing. I blinked. He blinked. Dylan bolted, screaming. But the door didn't open again. I stood still, leaned against the wall. The figure in the chair began to rise. Then everything shut off. Light, sound, weight. I woke up in the forest, alone. My camera on my chest turned off. Memory card corrupted. Nothing was saved. I grabbed my phone. No signal. A single message had arrived overnight. Log 08. Awaiting next entry. I went back to the city. Found Max. Dylan showed up 3 days later, mute but alive. He remembered nothing, or pretended not to. We're all okay now, working, breathing, living, but we never explored another place again. And even if the world thinks nothing happened, I know what I lived through down there, and it was real. I moved into this house after the divorce. Small, cheap, with a backyard big enough to pretend I still had some space in the world. It was the kind of place that seemed too good to be true. And maybe it was. The house sat on a quiet street in Rochester, New York. Neighbors with white fences and dogs that bark more than bite. So quiet that anything unusual stands out. Like a stain on a mirror. The yard led to another structure, some kind of tool shed. Or so it seemed. Broken shingles, dirty windows, a warped door. When the realtor showed me the property, he said that thing hadn't had electricity in years. Abandoned, just junk. You can tear it down if you want. I didn't care. I even found it poetic to have a forgotten piece of some past life at the edge of my new one, like me. The first few weeks were fine. I worked from home, programming, drinking too much coffee, sleeping too little. Sometimes I stepped into the yard at night to breathe. That's when I started seeing a dim light in the shed window. a sickly yellow light, like a candle. I thought it was just a reflection, but it kept appearing. One night, I decided to get closer. I brought a flashlight. The grass was flattened as if someone had walked through recently. Maybe an animal? I approached the door, which was slightly open. I aimed the flashlight inside. Old boxes, a blanket in the corner, a chair, and a candle recently extinguished, still smoking. I went back inside with a knot in my stomach. I tried to rationalize a homeless person, some curious kid. But who would break into private property, settle in, and light candles? That night, I locked every door and window and kept doing so every night after. I started noticing other things. The back door handle dirty with soil in the morning. Light noises during the night, like footsteps on dry leaves. I thought I was getting paranoid, but paranoia tends to be right when it starts making sense. One morning, while taking out the trash, I saw something on the back porch. A string tied to the door handle. On the other end, a rusted key, taped. No note, no explanation. I put the key in a drawer and kept working, always glancing at the window. When night came, I walked to the shed with the key in my pocket. The door wasn't locked. I stepped inside. Everything was the same, except one thing. On the chair, there was a photo, printed on regular paper. It was me, sleeping. I ran back to the house, called the police. They came, looked around, took pictures. No fingerprints but mine. One of the officers was kind. You could install a camera in the yard. It's cheaper than guessing. I bought 3. For the next few days, I stayed in. Set up motion alerts on the cameras, checked them obsessively. Nothing, no movement, no lights, until I got the notification. Motion detected, 2:14 a.m. I opened the video. A figure walking across the yard, slowly, wearing a long coat, maybe a hood. It stopped in front of the camera and looked directly into it, and smiled. Next day, I checked the camera. It was off. Someone had removed the battery. I didn't sleep that week. It became clear someone was playing with me. A silent presence that knew my schedule, my habits, my weaknesses. On Sunday, I went grocery shopping. When I returned, all the lights in the house were on. I had turned everything off. I started hearing noises in the attic, light ones, like something being dragged. I went up with a knife in hand. Nothing, except one of the cameras I thought I'd lost. It was on the floor. The lens was scratched. And then I realized it wasn't just the shed anymore. They, or he, or she, were already inside the house. On Wednesday, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a sheet of paper with a single line printed. On which side of the door do you feel safer? I panicked. Called the police again. They came, searched, found no sign of forced entry. Told me I should maybe seek professional help. I started sleeping with a kitchen knife by my bed. Friday night was the worst. I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Not regular footsteps. Barefoot, soft, slightly dragging. I froze, drenched in sweat, listening. The sound stopped at my bedroom door. I couldn't move. After a few seconds, the doorknob started to turn. Very slowly. I jumped up, locked the door, and screamed. Dialed 911. The officers arrived, swept the place. Again, nothing. No footprints, no sign, no explanation. I decided to leave. Threw everything into the car and spent the night at a motel. Came back the next day just to get the last few things. That's when I found the final envelope, taped to the back door like a cruel goodbye. Inside were several photos. Of me sleeping, of me in the shower, of me staring at the shed. In all of them, I was alone, except the last one. In the last one, I had my back to the camera, and behind me, very close, was a figure. No visible face, no eyes, but a smile. I didn't take anything else. I didn't look back. I left the house, got in the car, and drove off with the sunrise behind me. I rented a room downtown and emailed the keys to the realtor. I never went back, and I never will, because now I know the feeling of being watched wasn't in my head. It was someone, and that someone is still there. I moved to Chicago on a gray Friday, the kind of sky that feels heavy on your shoulders. My new apartment was on the second floor of an old brick building on a quiet stretch of Wabash Avenue. The staircase was narrow, the railing worn, and the air smelled of rust and stale coffee. It looked like a movie scene, but stripped of any charm. Just decay. I needed silence. The new job would demand long hours and focus. Medical equipment is delicate. A maintenance mistake could mean more than financial loss. It could mean death. I chose this building based on the ad. Quiet, affordable, few neighbors. It sounded perfect. The key was in a little metal lockbox hanging on the door, just as the agent said. I didn't have to see anyone. I stepped in, shut the door, and looked at my new space. Small but functional. One bedroom, a living room joined with the kitchen, and a tiny bathroom. Furnished in the bare minimum. The couch was old, the bed sank a little too much, but the place had a kind of dark charm, like it had been stuck in time. I unpacked fast, spent hours setting up my books, my computer, my tools. I only noticed the strange thing after sundown. The bedroom dresser drawer was jammed. I pulled hard until it flew open and something fell to the floor. A black notebook wrapped in electrical tape. I flipped through it. Scribbles, torn pages, repeated words. Not dead. The door again. He knows my name. A few pages had nothing but shaky lines, but in the corner of several pages, one name appeared. Liar. I glanced around like I expected someone to be there. The name echoed in my head. I closed the notebook and shoved it back into the drawer. I thought about asking the building manager, but it was late. I made some instant noodles, took a quick shower, and went to bed. I slept poorly. Dreamed of a door slamming over and over in a place I couldn't see. Next morning, I went down to grab coffee. The manager was scrubbing the stairwell. A short, weathered woman, dressed in a sweatshirt way too warm for the weather. "Good morning," I said. "Sorry to ask, but do you know who lived in 2B before me?" She stopped, looked up, but didn't reply right away, then simply said, "Been empty a while." "You sure?" I asked. I found a notebook in the bedroom. It had a name, Liar. Her eyes hardened. "People leave things. You should throw it away. Those things stick. She went back to scrubbing. Didn't say another word. I returned to the apartment trying not to think about it. But something gnawed at me. The way she reacted, like the name itself was something dangerous to say aloud. Saturday, I found something else. An old digital voice recorder, the kind with worn-out buttons, tucked behind some plates in the kitchen. I pressed play. Static at first, then a woman's voice. "If you're hearing this, it means he's still coming in." Silence. Breathing. Then, "Don't open if he knocks. Please, don't open." I stopped the recording. My chest tightened. I looked around. The bedroom door was ajar, but I distinctly remembered closing it. Next morning, I locked the recorder in the desk drawer and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone mentally unstable. maybe some sick prank. But the voice didn't feel fake. It trembled like someone exhausted from being afraid. Work consumed me. The days started to blur. Repairs reports, the sterile whir of machines. But at night, the apartment changed. At first, it was subtle. The fridge buzzed louder. The bathroom heater made a deeper hum. At 3:04 a.m. every night, I heard a creaking sound above my head. I assumed it was the upstairs neighbor, but there was no upstairs. The building only had 2 floors, and I was on the second. Tuesday night, I found another recording, not in the apartment, in my pocket. I was coming back from work, exhausted. I reached for my phone and found a memory card tucked beside it. My heart froze. I replayed my day. No one had come close enough to slip it in. No one. I put it in my laptop. A single audio file. Her voice, clearer this time. "He's getting close to you too, isn't he?" Long pause. It starts with sounds, then dreams. But he doesn't want to hurt you. He just wants you to open the door. Silence. I heard the walls breathing. He was behind them. He still is. I shut everything down. Someone was watching me. That was a fact now, using liar as a character. But why? What kind of game was this? I walked aimlessly through the city, ended up in a half-empty bar, ordered a beer, tried to ignore the growing pressure in my chest. When I went to pay, I realized my credit card was gone. I rushed home and found the front door unlocked. But nothing seemed out of place, except the bathroom mirror. Someone had written in the steam, "You're hearing it now, aren't you?" I went back to the manager the next day. I wanted answers, just a full name, a record of the last tenant. She opened the door a crack. "I just want to know who Laya was." "Her last name? What happened?" She hesitated. Her eyes weren't surprised, just resigned. "Nobody told you before you moved in?" "Told me what?" "She lived there, alone, for months. Said she heard things in the walls, voices, a man. Claimed the whole building was a trap. And then she disappeared." "Disappeared how?" "Just didn't show up one day. Cops came. Apartment was clean, no forced entry, no sign of her, just one thing left behind, lipstick on the mirror. He got in." I swallowed hard. "And you rented it out again?" She shrugged. "Not illegal. We painted, cleaned. The weird stuff stopped. For a while." "And now?" She didn't answer, just shut the door. Back upstairs, the recorder was on my desk. I had locked it away. I pressed play. It was my voice, sleeping, breathing. Then a whisper that wasn't mine. "He's behind the wall, waiting." I stared at the bedroom wall. The paint, it was pulsing slightly. I pressed my ear to it, and I swear I heard someone whisper my name. Next morning, I brought my laptop to work. I needed to hear the recording again in a safe space. But when I opened the folder, the file was gone. Not in the trash, just gone. I asked around if anyone had noticed anything strange about me. One coworker joked, "Saw you talking to yourself in the break room the other day. You looked kind of blank." I didn't remember that. That night, the creaking came again. Not from above, from inside the wall next to my bed. I got up, cautiously, placed a hand on the drywall, cold but vibrating. I thought about knocking, then something knocked back. 3 distinct knocks. From inside, I stumbled back, turned on all the kitchen lights, tried locking the front door. The bolt jammed like someone was holding it from the other side. I didn't open it. Next morning, it was locked again. Perfectly. I went to the city records office, asked about previous tenants. The clerk was helpful until he saw the last entry for Unit 2B. Laya Campbell. Yeah, signed a 6-month lease, stayed for. Any family? No relatives on file. But look at this. He turned the screen. 2 separate lease entries, same name, different signatures, different ID photos. That's not normal, right? He shook his head slowly. Looks like someone tried to overwrite something, or someone. That night, the wall crack had grown. Now it was a seam, splitting the faint like skin. I found a note taped to the back of the recorder. You're the second. Don't let him make a third. Later that night, something heavy thudded in the bedroom. I ran in. The wall had opened. A thin door-shaped slit now stood where the crack had been. From inside, I heard a voice. Familiar. Tom. Laya's voice. You get it now, don't you? No, I whispered. You weren't chosen. You were forgotten. That's worse. Inside the crack, something shifted. A surface. Reflective. I saw my own face, but it didn't mimic me. It moved on its own. Then it smiled and said with my voice, I stay. You leave. I woke up in a white room. No windows, no doors, just a bed, a mirror, and a recorder playing softly. The tape said, the new tenant is on the way. The room is ready. The previous has been replaced. I still hear voices through the walls. I know the building is still out there. The room is still available. And someone, somewhere, is about to sign the lease. Not out of malice, just by mistake. Just by existing. I don't think I've ever felt as safe as I did that weekend. The road was clear, the sky bright, and the company perfect. 3 couples, all longtime friends, heading to spend a few days at a lakeside house in rural Vermont. The kind of place that looks like it came out of a real estate catalog. The kind where your biggest worries should be bugs or forgetting your phone charger. The house was beautiful, modern, with massive glass panels facing the water. We arrived around noon. Everything went as planned. Cold beers, grilled food, laughter echoing between the trees. There were 6 of us. Me and Julia, my girlfriend, Mark and Taylor, the competitive couple, and Chris and Nadine, the 2 so in love it was almost annoying. Friends since college. The first day was light, swimming in the lake, quiet music, aimless conversations. That night, we had dinner on the porch and laughed for hours. The forest around us felt like just background, tall trees, dark, dense, like a painting. But on the second day, things started to shift. Chris noticed it first, a trail on the left side of the property that looked freshly opened. The grass still pressed down like someone had walked through recently. Probably someone from the rental company, he said, curious. Let's check it out. Mark jumped in, already in adventure mode. Nadine hesitated, but the rest of us were into it. We grabbed water bottles, left the phones charging, and followed. The sun was still high, and the idea of exploring felt innocent enough. The trail was narrow but not long. After about 20 minutes, we heard the crunch change beneath our shoes. Wood. Something man-made. Taylor pointed first. Is that a cabin? It was. Small, with grimy windows and a rotting wooden door. Completely out of place. No fence, no sign of ownership, no visible path leading back, like it had been forgotten. We approached cautiously. The forest around us felt paused. No wind, no sound. Mark peeked through the window. He froze. There's someone inside. A woman. We ran to the side. I looked through another crack and saw her. Tied to a chair, hair stuck to her face, mouth gagged. And worse, she saw us. started thrashing in panic. "Break the door!" Julia shouted. Mark and Chris kicked it in with 2 blows. We rushed in. The place stank, mold, sweat, blood. We cut her loose with a kitchen knife Nadine found. She collapsed on the floor, coughing, eyes darting between us like she was trying to warn us about something worse. He went to get firewood. He always does that before dark. She gasped. "But he's not..." She stopped, swallowed hard, looked toward the forest. "Not what? Not a man. He's not like us." A heavy silence fell over us. "We need to leave. Now," she said, "before it gets dark." The woman could barely walk, but she urged us to move faster with a desperation none of us questioned. Julia helped her along while Nadine wiped her face with the hem of her shirt. "What's your name?" I asked. "Erin," she answered without meeting my eyes. "But that doesn't matter. We have to go." Now, we didn't argue. The air inside that cabin had been wrong, dense like it didn't want us to breathe. We moved quickly down the trail, eyes scanning the underbrush, waiting for someone or something to appear. Mark broke the silence. "What did she mean? He's not like us?" No one answered. "Maybe she just meant he's a psycho," Nadine offered, trying to laugh. Erin shook her head, almost imperceptibly. "You didn't see." The sun began to dip. The woods changed color. Shadows stretched. The path felt longer, as if it were stretching. The trees felt closer. Chris suddenly stopped, pointed left. "Did you hear that?" "What?" I asked. "A sound. I don't know. Like coughing, but wrong. Deep." We went quiet, listening. Nothing. Julia picked up the pace. Erin was tense. "He waits for dark. Always." "Erin," I said carefully. "What is he?" She hesitated, then said, "He looks human. From far away, but up close. Something's wrong, like the body isn't built right, like he's trying to look human and keeps getting it off." That chilled me to the core. Mark let out a nervous laugh. "This sounds like a movie." "You think this is a movie, Mark?" Taylor snapped. "That woman was tied up. What do you need to see to take this seriously?" He went quiet. Another 20 minutes passed. The sky now bled red and purple. That's when I saw it. Between the trees, to the right of the trail. Still, motionless. A figure. At first, it looked like a man, thin, wearing a light shirt, arms hanging too long at his sides. But something was wrong. The proportions, the way it stood there, like a paper cutout glued into the forest. It didn't move, but I knew it saw us, and it knew I saw it too. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. Julia noticed my stare. "What?" "There," I whispered. "Someone's there." Everyone looked, but he was gone. "You're pale," Chris said. "I swear he was right there, a guy, but not..." I shook my head. I don't know how to explain it. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. Erin squeezed my hand tight. "He saw you too." We reached the lake house minutes later, locked all the doors. Erin told us to close the curtains, turn off the lights, and stay in the center of the house. Mark called the police, gave a version of the story that was more careful than true. Said we found a kidnapped woman and that her captor might still be nearby. "They're sending a car," he said, "but it'll take about 40 minutes." We sat in silence. Moonlight filtered through a window crack. That's when we heard it. A faint sound, like fingers dragging along glass. From the side of the house, the side facing the lake. No one moved. Chris grabbed a kitchen knife. Taylor trembled. And I just thought, don't look. Don't give it what it wants. Then the sound stopped, and everything went still. Absolutely still. A silence that screamed. We stayed like that for almost 30 minutes. No one spoke. No one looked out. The only light came from a single candle Nadine lit in the center of the room. Erin remained on the floor, knees to her chest, eyes fixed on the front door. I've never felt fear like that. Not the jump scare kind, but the kind that sets in deep, like a weight in your gut, like the air itself is waiting for something to break. The engine hum brought relief. A police car. Then another. Mark rushed to unlock the door before anyone could stop him. 2 officers emerged, young. One carried a clipboard, the other a flashlight. They told us to calm down and walk them through the story. Erin interrupted. The cabin, please, before he comes back. He never stays gone long. One officer, the one with pale eyes, gave her a look, part skeptical, part concerned. Can you take us there? She nodded. Chris, Mark, and I went along. The woods looked different now, more alive, but not in a good way. Alive like something watching. The leaves moved without wind. The branches seemed to point. We followed Erin. She walked fast, like she had something to prove. 20 minutes later, there it was. The cabin. But something was wrong. The door was intact. No signs of forced entry. The windows were clean. No chair in the center. No ropes. No Erin, other than the one with us. No, she whispered. I was here. You saw me. The officers checked inside. It was empty. No beds, no smell. Nothing, not even dust. Mark lost it. This doesn't make sense. We broke that door. The chair was right there. The pale-eyed officer knelt down, touched the floor. No signs of anyone being here recently? None. Chris leaned toward me and whispered, You think she... Number. I cut him off. I saw it. I saw what was in those woods. Whatever it is, it's messing with everything. Erin started to cry. He did this. He cleans, erases. Every time someone tries to escape. Back at the house, the police said they'd file a report, that a team would come in daylight, that Erin should be evaluated. You're safe for now, they said, but I knew they didn't believe her. The next morning, they took Erin away. She didn't want to go, but before leaving, she gave Julia a folded piece of paper with trembling hands. I never saw what it said. Julia burned it in the grill outside, said it was better that way. We left that same day. No one objected. No one wanted a minute more there. Months passed. Everyone went back to their lives. But I still think about it. Every night, the trail, the figure between the trees, the sound on the glass, the cabin that vanished. And most of all, the glimpse I caught in the living room window reflection that night. A face behind mine. Too tall, too still. Wrong. I have no proof. The police have no records. The trail no longer exists. But I saw it. And if you're ever in a forest and feel something watching you, don't look back. Because if you see it, it will know. And it will remember you. When I rented the house, the agent said Walnut Hill was a place good for disappearing from the world. And she was right. A dirt road nearly a kilometer long led to a single-story wooden house, light-colored, with a front porch, 2 large windows, and a covered garage. No nearby structures, no cell signal. It was exactly what I needed. The city had chewed me up over the past months. Pressures I couldn't explain. People fading away. Deadlines stacking up. I needed silence, and I found it. Real silence. The kind that hums in your ears when everything stops. I arrived on a Tuesday just after 5 p.m. The sun still lit the open field behind the house. It smelled of dry wood and freshly cut grass. Inside, the house was rustic but clean. Heavy furniture, a deep couch, firm bed, a small kitchen, all functional. I unpacked slowly, no rush, as if I were entering a different timeline. I spent the evening on the porch, staring at the field, seeing no one, and I slept early. The first night was perfect. No noise, no cars, no doorbells. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I brewed strong coffee, opened my laptop, and started writing. My plan was to finish a project I had abandoned, a book of essays stuck in limbo. Days passed slowly, too silently. The wind there didn't make noise. The trees swayed without a sound, like they were trying not to be noticed. At night, the darkness was thick, like paint. Even with the lights on, there were corners of the house that remained completely dark. On the fourth day, I noticed something small. Footprints on the porch, barefoot. I thought they might have been mine. I went to check, but they were larger, and they came from the side of the house, heading toward the front door. I told no one, had no one to tell. It was easier to believe they were old marks. That's the kind of thought you force yourself to believe when silence starts to feel like something pressing against your skin. Friday night, the air grew thick, warm. I went to bed with the fan blasting on high. Then I woke up. 3:16 a.m. No reason. The fan had stopped and the bedside lamp was flickering. I got up, half asleep, walked to the kitchen for water. That's when I heard it. A creak. From below? Only problem, the house was one story. I walked back toward the bedroom, heart pounding. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The flashlight was weak, but enough to see. My eyes were still adjusting. I stepped into the hallway. The house felt different, smaller, tighter. Another sound. Footsteps. In the living room. Someone or something was moving with purpose, like it already knew the layout. I had no weapon, just a kitchen pair of scissors. I grabbed them from a drawer and approached the entrance to the living room. The light switch didn't work. Power was out. The only light came from outside, moonlight reflecting through a window. And then I saw a shadow pass. Large, too fast. I couldn't tell what it was, but I knew, with the kind of certainty that's instinctual, that it wasn't an animal, nor a man. Not the way I understood men. I turned to run back to the bedroom, but something moved behind me. I didn't have time to scream. I was tackled to the floor. And it began. I hit the floor hard. The air left my lungs like a punch from inside. Something slammed into my shoulder. Then a heavy weight pinned me down. It was big, hot, silent. I thrashed out of instinct but couldn't break free. The hands, or what felt like hands, gripped my chest and neck. The pressure was wrong, like the fingers were too long and the force came from strange angles, like it knew how to mimic a person's grip, but not perfectly. I managed to land a kick. Something gave way. The weight lifted for a moment. I rolled to the side, stood up without thinking, and ran blindly toward the kitchen. Behind me, the footsteps came again, running, but not like a person, more like claws. I reached the sink, opened the drawer, grabbed the big knife, turned just as it hit me again. The world spun. I fell with the knife still in my hand. It fell on top of me. I tried to stab, hit something, couldn't tell what. No scream, no words, just breathing. And then no sound at all, like it didn't need to make any. I fought like hell in the dark. My arms struck something that moved too fast but didn't run, like it was testing me or playing. I crawled toward the table, swung blindly. The blade hit something. I felt warmth on my hand, Then stillness. A low gurgling sound, like a wet crack inside a throat, filled the air, like bones breaking from the outside. Then the weight pulled back. It crawled fast and vanished. I lay on the floor, panting, gripping the knife, my whole body shaking. Sweat poured down my face, mixing with blood. Mine. The things I couldn't tell. I couldn't stand for minutes. The silence came back, louder than before. Not absence, anticipation, like the house was holding its breath, waiting. I stood up, trembling, walked toward the hallway. Every step echoed. The floor groaned like it was alive. I entered the bathroom, shut the door, turned on the phone light, locked the handle, looked in the mirror. There were marks on my neck, finger marks. 5, but far too long, like the hand of a man if his fingers were dislocated and extended. I washed my face. Blood kept running from my temple. Grabbed a towel, sat on the floor, and waited for hours. The sun started to break through the slats. Birds chirped. The world returned like nothing had happened. The power came back with a soft pop. The fan spun. Kitchen lights turned on. I opened the bathroom door slowly. The house looked normal, but the living room floor, mahast, was stained with blood and claw marks, like something had dragged its fingers as it left. No door broken, no window smashed. Nothing was taken. Nothing, except my peace. I called the police right after sunrise. The call dropped twice. When I finally got through, I tried to explain and failed. Someone broke in. Did you see them? Not clearly, but they attacked me. What was it? I don't know. I couldn't see. 40 minutes later, 2 officers arrived, along with an ambulance. The paramedic patched the cut on my temple and asked if I remembered everything. I did. I just didn't know how to name it. The officers were polite, efficient. They combed the house, took photos, wrote everything down. No footprints outside, no forced entry. Could have been an animal. It had hands, I said. He gave me a look, like someone trying to believe a lie told sincerely. Could have been a man, maybe on something. Maybe, but I knew better. They asked if I wanted to leave. I said yes. I packed fast, threw everything into the trunk, and left without looking back. I never returned to Walnut Hill. I couldn't sleep properly for weeks. Panic attacks, paranoia, left every light on, installed new locks, cameras. Still, I'd wake up sometimes, convinced something was standing in the corner. No proof, just instinct. I started therapy, told the full story. My therapist listened carefully, then said something that still haunts me. Maybe the scariest part isn't what you saw. Maybe it's what you didn't see, what stayed hidden in the dark, what your mind couldn't comprehend. And he was right, because sometimes the memory that hurts most isn't what happened, it's what almost did. Now, months later, the scar on my forehead still itches when I'm nervous. I don't rent country houses anymore, no isolated getaways. I moved back to the city, where the noise is constant and the neighbors are many. But I still dream about the fight, the darkness, the texture of that body against mine. That thing wasn't a man. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't something I can describe. But it touched me with purpose, and somehow it saw me, even in the dark, even in silence. It knew exactly where I was, and that, more than anything, is what I'll never forget. The cabin smelled like something forgotten. Wet wood, thick dust, rotting leaves. The kind of place where silence feels heavy. Paul inherited it from his grandfather, a piece of land in rural Virginia with a small 2-room house and a shed out back. Nothing around it. No cell service, no neighbors. According to him, it was perfect, just needed repairs to become a personal getaway. Leo and I came along more out of loyalty than excitement. Old friendships have that. You agree to stupid weekends in the name of shared history. We brought tools, canned food, 3 air mattresses, and Leo's dog, Oscar, a quiet black mutt that never barked at anything. We arrived late Friday afternoon. Cloudy sky. Paul was excited like he'd bought a castle. Showed us around with pride. My grandpa lived here alone since 1994. Never let anyone touch anything. Easy to believe. The house looked untouched. Rusty pans, moldy books, a dusty old radio on top of a drawerless dresser. We spent Saturday clearing leaves, fixing the roof, testing power outlets. At night, we sat by a makeshift fire pit, drinking beer. Oscar lay at our feet, still and calm. That's when Leo brought it up. "There's a shed out back, right?" "Yeah," Paul said. "But it's locked. Heavy chain and padlock. No key." "Not curious?" "Of course I am. But that lock's old. We'll cut it open tomorrow." And we did. Sunday morning, post-coffee, we grabbed a metal saw and headed for the shed. The chain was thick but rusted through. Paul held it tight while Leo sawed. Metal groaned and flaked into the air. Took 20 minutes. When the chain finally snapped, I felt a chill for no reason, like we'd let something out that was supposed to stay in. Paul opened the door slowly. The smell hit hard, damp, sour, and oddly sweet, like meat left out for too long. "Jesus!" Leo covered his face. We wrapped our shirts over our noses and stepped in. The shed was nearly empty. A workbench, a few old tools, a toppled wooden chair, and something under a dark tarp in the corner. Paul pulled it away, a trapdoor, sealed with a rusted latch. "Is this real?" Paul whispered. "The house had a locked door inside another locked door?" I said. Oscar started to growl, low and steady. We all went quiet. "Let's leave it for another day," I said. Paul agreed. He covered it again. We locked the shed with a new padlock. That night, Oscar wouldn't sleep. He just sat facing the direction of the shed. And the next morning, he was gone. We searched for hours. Oscar never wandered far. Not in the city, not here. Always came back with the first whistle. But that morning, nothing. No sign. The woods felt deeper than before. Quieter. Leo paced, calling for the dog, voice cracking. Paul climbed a trail, waving his phone uselessly. No signal. We searched around the cabin, behind the shed, near the creek. Nothing. Then Leo said, "He didn't run off." "What?" "He never leaves like this, not unless someone..." He stopped, but we all heard it. "Unless someone took him." We went back to the shed. Paul stood still at the door, like trying to remember something. He unlocked it slowly. The smell was worse, more raw. The tarp still covered the corner. Paul didn't hesitate this time. Yanked it away. The trapdoor was still there. But the latch looked loose, like it had been tampered with. "Was it like this yesterday?" I asked. "It was tighter, I swear," Paul said. Leo crouched, pushed hard. The latch broke. The trapdoor creaked open. Below, a narrow concrete staircase descending into darkness. A sharp, almost metallic stench rose up, like old blood and rust. "Anyone down there?" Paul shouted. Silence. Leo grabbed a flashlight, went first. The stairs led to a low, damp cellar. Stone walls, dirt floor. In the corner, a collar. Oscar's. Leo dropped to the ground, picked it up with shaking hands. Couldn't speak. I sat beside him. Paul stayed on the steps, flashlight trembling. Then I saw it. Scratch marks on the walls, not in straight lines, but in circles, like claws had paced for days, maybe weeks. Paul bolted up the stairs, muttering something about air. Leo and I were still in the cellar when we heard a creak above. Then footsteps. But no one was up there. We climbed out, fast. Paul wasn't in the shed. We ran to the house. Nothing. We called out. No answer. Leo entered first, flashlight up. I followed. On the kitchen table was something new, Oscar's collar. Again. This can't be, Leo murmured. I had it. It's dirtier, I said. This isn't right. This isn't. He was cut off by a dry sound in the living room. We ran. Paul stood in the corner, facing the wall, not moving. Leo called his name 3 times. No reply. When we touched his shoulder, he turned slowly. His face was smeared with dirt. And his eyes, they looked like they knew something he couldn't say. He only said one thing. Don't go down there again. Paul didn't speak for the rest of the day. We tried. He barely responded. Eyes distant, hands trembling. Sometimes he turned his head slowly, staring at empty corners like he was waiting for something to appear. That afternoon, he asked for one thing. Let's leave. Tonight. Now, no one argued. We packed in minutes. Leo was the last one in the car, staring at the woods around the cabin. The collar's gone again, he said, flat. We drove in silence. 3 hours with no music, no conversation. Paul stayed at his sister's. Leo went home. I tried to forget. Therapy, work, distractions. For weeks, no one brought it up. Then Leo called me. Paul's gone. What do you mean? Left everything, phone, wallet. His sister said he walked out in the middle of the night. No note. Police? Nothing yet, but I went to his place. He left a message. What did it say? Leo swallowed hard. He climbs at night now. I see the prints on the floorboards. Pause. But he doesn't knock anymore. He waits. 2 weeks later, Leo disappeared too. That's when I knew we never should have opened that trapdoor. Some things aren't meant to be seen. Others are just waiting for a crack to get out. I don't know if it was alive or something loneliness created, but I know it wasn't our imagination. I remember the smell, the sound of wood giving way, the silence after Paul turned around. Now, I still hear things. Soft footsteps in my empty apartment, doors creaking even when locked. One night, I saw prints on my porch, bare, wet, just like at the cabin. I stood for a long time watching through the curtain, too afraid to open, because I know if it crawled up from the earth once, it didn't go back, and it's looking for the rest of us. My name is Michael Harris. I'm 30 years old and live in Ashfield, one of those small Pennsylvania towns you only know if you've ever gotten lost around here. I'm not exactly an adventurer. I work as a forklift operator at a distribution warehouse, and on weekends, I usually scout out abandoned places to photograph. Not out of bravery, more out of that strange urge to find something that makes time feel a little less wasted. That's how I ended up at Greystone Tunnel. I found out about the place through an urban explorers forum, an old railway tunnel abandoned for more than 70 years. Isolated, overgrown, almost erased from maps. The few photos showed a black stone arch, half swallowed by the forest. Some comments warned not to go alone. Not because of the condition of the place, but for other reasons. Which, of course, no one clearly explained. It was a Sunday afternoon when I decided to go. The dirt road leading to the tunnel was little more than a muddy track surrounded by trees too tall for comfort. I parked in a makeshift clearing, grabbed my camera, my flashlight, and started hiking. The path narrowed quickly, forcing me to brush through clawing branches. The air grew heavier with each step. Finally, I saw it. The tunnel opened like a gaping mouth in the middle of the woods, its stone blackened by time. No gate, no warning signs. Just absolute darkness beyond the arch. I stood there for a moment. It wasn't fear, not yet, but something unsettling, like the place itself was sizing me up. I turned on the flashlight and stepped inside. The ground was gravel, with rusted tracks still faintly visible. The air inside was icy, heavy with the smell of wet stone and oxidized metal. I walked slowly, taking photos of the moss-covered walls. The flashlight's beam cut thin lines into the dark, but around me, the space felt unnaturally vast for such a confined place. Then I heard it. A crack, not an echo of my own step, a different rhythm. I froze. Nothing. I forced myself to keep moving, trying to ignore the growing tension crawling up my spine. Another crack. Louder, and then the sound of something. Not someone. Something. Moving deeper in the tunnel. Something that was now between me and the exit. The first instinct was to turn back, but something made me stay. Maybe the need to understand, maybe just stubbornness, not wanting to feel weak in front of myself. I moved a few more steps forward. The flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. Each beam of light revealed nothing but deeper shadows, more emptiness. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly. Then something crossed the beam of light. Quick, small. Could have been a rat, I thought. A bat, something natural. I kept going. Another crack to my left. Loud, like rocks shifting. I whipped the flashlight around. Nothing. The echo of my own movements filled the space. But buried inside those echoes, there was a different sound, a dragging noise. Slow, rhythmic, like footsteps. Hello? My voice came out weak, swallowed by the vastness of the tunnel. No response. By now, every nerve in my body was on alert. The air felt colder, heavier. I decided to turn back. As I turned, my flashlight caught something. For an instant, I saw a figure ahead, standing motionless. Tall. Very tall, so still it could have been part of the wall. The flashlight flickered for a fraction of a second. When the light steadied, the figure was gone. Silence fell again, heavy and suffocating. I started walking back as fast as I could, feeling, not seeing, that something was following me. Real fear doesn't feel like a shock. It's thick, sticky. It clings to your bones. Every step I took echoed like a gunshot. The feeling of being followed wasn't coming from sound. It came from something deeper, something primal. I didn't look back. I ran. My breathing turned shallow and ragged, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The flashlight beam jerked wildly ahead of me, illuminating nothing but endless tracks and scattered stones. Something slammed hard against the tunnel wall behind me. The sound rolled through the space like trapped thunder. I ran faster. I could see the exit, the black arch against a pale, clouded sky. Still cruelly far away, I heard the dragging noise again. Closer, heavier. I felt it. A shift in the air right beside my head. I almost stumbled. I did stumble. I fell hard onto the gravel, the flashlight slipping from my hand and spinning across the ground, its beam throwing dizzying light against the tunnel's ceiling. In the spinning light, I saw a shadow flash past me. Something without clear shape. I crawled desperately, grabbed the flashlight, and forced myself up. Ignoring the burning pain in my knees, I ran again. Almost without realizing, I burst out of the tunnel's mouth and collapsed onto the damp forest floor. The outside world was a smudged gray, heavy with the threat of rain. Behind me, inside the tunnel, there was absolute silence. But I knew it was still there, and it had seen me. I ran without looking back. I only stopped when I saw my car, hidden beneath the shadows of the trees. I climbed inside, locked the doors with a loud click, and sat there for a moment, trying to breathe. My whole body was trembling uncontrollably. Finally, I started the engine and sped down the dirt road, the car sliding in the mud. Only when Ashfield appeared on the horizon, its faint, familiar lights, did I start to believe I was safe. But the feeling never left. For days, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder for no reason. I heard small clicks in the middle of the night. I felt that presence again, as if it were just barely out of sight. I never told anyone what happened at Greystone Tunnel. I know what they would say, that it was fear, that darkness plays tricks, that loneliness warps the senses. Maybe they're right, maybe. But some nights, as I lie in bed, I hear a sound from the end of the hallway. A dragging noise. Slow. Rhythmic. Like footsteps on gravel. And every time I close my eyes, I see that shadow again. Standing still, waiting patiently, as if it knows that sooner or later, I'll have to go back. I want to remain as anonymous as possible with this. It was a very serious situation that gave me PTSD and unfortunately left deep scars. I've changed all names and places in this story so that no one can trace it back to me. I've always been a very reclusive person ever since I was a kid. Even in elementary school, teachers would tell my parents I had antisocial behavior. I even participated in those special 20-minute speech and behavior sessions. Back then, I didn't understand why I had to be there while the rest of the class wasn't. Middle school was when the social hell of school really hit. Kids started forming their cliques, and it only got worse in high school. I never had learning difficulties, just social ones. They've improved with time, but I still consider myself introverted and a bit awkward. Even so, I've made close friends, and I'm thankful for that. But now, let's talk about girls. Of course, being socially reclusive comes with relationship struggles. To be direct, and this matters for the story, I lost my virginity at 21, which I guess is a little late. By the time of this story, I was 23, living on my own, already working in a well-paid field for a few years. I had bought a townhouse in my hometown, spacious and modern. The kind of place that impresses girls when you're 23 and you own it. One day, while swiping on Tinder, I matched with a really cute girl. Let's call her Emily. We went to a local restaurant for dinner. Throughout the date, I was in my own head, worried she was judging me or that I was acting awkward. So when I got home, I was sure she wouldn't want to see me again. But that same night, while I was in bed, she texted saying she really liked me and had fun. I was thrilled. We went on a second, third, and fourth date. Everything felt amazing once I got out of my head. We became an official couple pretty quickly. But the honeymoon phase didn't last forever. At first, you're excited every time they text or call. You crave the attention. Ideally, it's mutual. But gradually, I started feeling like she was texting me way too much, all day long. If I took too long to reply, she'd send or call. One day, while we were on the couch, she demanded that we share live location with each other. I wasn't happy about it, even though I had nothing to hide. But I did it. A couple of months into the relationship, with our locations now shared, things turned ugly. She began asking why I was at Phil's house and not replying. One night, I was at Phil's with my friend Mark in his basement, just hanging out, and Emily literally showed up at his house. Phil's mom brought her downstairs. Emily didn't hide her anger. She loudly scolded me in front of everyone, asking why I was messing around with friends instead of answering her texts about a winery visit the next day. I asked if we could talk about it later, but she insisted I leave with her. I apologized to my friends and went outside with her. We had an argument on the street. She wanted to come home with me, but I said no. We had driven separately. I drove home and told her not to follow me. Once home, I sent a long text saying I needed a break, that I needed space. Sure, maybe I should have done it in person. But honestly, I was afraid of her reaction face to face. Of course, she started calling non-stop, blowing up my phone. When I stopped replying, she banged on my front door, rang the doorbell relentlessly. My neighbor came outside and asked her what she was doing. I heard Emily screaming, calling me names. My neighbor stayed calm and asked her to go home. I listened to all of it with my ear pressed against the door. She finally left, but I was extremely disturbed. And no, it didn't come out of nowhere. There were signs, but I was blinded by the honeymoon phase. The next day, I remembered to stop sharing my location. Almost instantly, she started messaging me in rage. Every message she sent made me more certain I had made the right choice. My final message to her was, "I'm sorry, Emily. I need to block you for a while. You're scaring me." She didn't show up again, but I noticed she stopped sharing her location right away. Exactly 1 week later, I went to Phil's again. I left around 11 p.m. When I got home, I wasn't tired, and I was hungry. I heated up some food, sat on the couch, and browsed streaming apps for a scary movie. When the microwave beeped and everything went silent, I suddenly heard a click or thud from the dining room. The layout of my townhouse looped around in a circle: kitchen, dining room, living room, den, separated by a central wall. But the dining room had a closed door instead of an open arch. I muted the TV and listened. That's when I clearly heard the door between the den and dining room creak open. I looked and called out, "Who's there?" No reply. I walked in. My blood ran cold when I saw that door wide open. I always keep all doors in the house shut, especially that one. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife, and immediately called 911. It was my first time ever calling emergency services. I spoke loudly into the phone so whoever was in the house would hear me say, "I think my crazy ex-girlfriend broke into my house. Please send someone." I explained what was happening. The dispatcher told me to leave the house if I could. I waited outside near the door. To my surprise, the cops showed up quickly. I explained everything and led the officer into the house. We did a thorough search together. No one was there. We checked everything: under the beds, closets, couch, crawl space, attic. The officer told me to call again if I heard anything. He believed me. I wasn't imagining it. There was no way I could relax after that. I ate my food, went upstairs, locked my door, and texted everyone I knew. I tried to write it off as some creepy coincidence. I almost texted Emily, but I didn't. I took a melatonin and surprisingly fell asleep quickly. but I'm a light sleeper, and something woke me up. The room felt wrong. I checked my phone and saw tons of text from a random number. That must have been what woke me. It didn't take long to realize it was Emily. A long paragraph apologizing, begging to talk, saying she wanted to see me. The rest of the texts were her writing. Are you awake? Wake up. Wake up? She said it 8 times. Oddly, she hadn't called me. I replied, why are you awake right now? This is insane. You blowing up my phone at this hour is proof enough that I want nothing to do with you anymore. Please leave me alone. Seconds after I hit send, I heard a scream from my closet. Emily's voice. No! The closet door burst open. I didn't think. I just jumped out of bed and ran. The bedroom door wasn't locked anymore. I got out, slammed the door shut behind me, and held it. She didn't just try to open it. She started stabbing the door. I saw the knife piercing through, right where my side had been moments before. In that instant, I yelled, "Baby, I love you. Stop." Instead of saying she was crazy, I improvised. I told her I was going through a hard time, but I loved her and wanted to get back together. She paused, then said, frantic, "That's all I wanted to hear. Why couldn't you just be honest?" She asked me to open the door. I stalled, told her I was scared, asked her to drop the knife. She agreed. I told her to throw it across the room. I wanted to hear it hit the floor. She did. I heard it clang off the wall and fall. That's when I ripped the door open and tackled her to the floor. She screamed, fought back, went hysterical. I didn't care. I pinned her down and yelled my address into the phone, still connected to 911. To my shock, the police kicked in the front door, loud enough to echo upstairs. A lot of officers came in. Emily was cuffed, crying uncontrollably. I wasn't crying. I was in pure shock. It was the most traumatic night of my life, and the nightmare didn't end there. There was a long, painful legal process. Emily was convicted on serious charges. She's now in prison. That doesn't bring me joy. This was someone I shared my life with, someone I thought I loved, someone who tried to kill me. She was deeply unwell, and what hurts most is how oblivious I was, not just because I was infatuated, but because of my own lack of self-confidence. I was too busy trying to impress her to notice the red flags. I know this will haunt me forever, and honestly, even anonymously, it feels good to finally share this story. If someone chooses to read it, maybe it'll serve as a warning. There's an abandoned motel called the Royal Hawaiian Motel. It's been abandoned for well over a decade. I do a lot of solo urban exploration, sometimes at night, and this place is located in Baker, California. During the day, it gets blisteringly hot, way too hot to be walking around with a backpack. So I chose to explore the motel at night. It was very easy to get to. I parked on the side of the road and walked over. There was no fence to climb, no gate, and no security. Definitely one of the easiest structures I've ever explored. In the back, there was a deep, empty pool, completely covered in graffiti. I pointed my flashlight up toward the motel building and noticed that half of the upstairs room doors were either slightly ajar or completely shattered. It looked creepy, but honestly, that was expected for a place left abandoned for so long. I knew I wasn't the first person to explore here. Part of the building looked like it had been damaged in a fire, completely blackened and half collapsed. I looked around outside for a while. Since it was late, there was no sound of passing cars. The only thing I could hear was the crunch of my shoes stepping over debris. Then suddenly, my blood ran cold. I heard a female voice nearby. My immediate reaction in situations like this is to assume it's either a security guard or someone who could be trouble. I usually try to disappear and hide. That's exactly what I did. I ran into one of the rooms on the ground floor and turned off my flashlight. After a minute of silence, I turned it back on. I looked around the room I was in. The walls were covered in graffiti and there was just one piece of furniture. A small 4-drawer dresser and an old dusty mattress on the floor. I wondered if maybe homeless people ever slept there, but considering how far it is from any real town, I doubted it. I left the room and continued checking out the rest of the motel. I peeked into every room I could access on the ground floor, below the upper-level walkway. Most of them were similar: scattered furniture, broken mattresses, random spray paint all over. Suddenly, I heard a crashing sound from above, like something had fallen. My heart skipped a beat. I stepped outside and aimed my flashlight up toward the walkway and broken doors. Then, I decided to go upstairs and investigate. I assumed it was probably an animal, but you never know. It could be another explorer or someone else. I went up and peeked into each room along the way. Every room looked more or less the same: junk, broken furniture, mattresses, general decay. As I walked further along the walkway, I heard a banging sound. It grew louder. As I got closer, it was a slow, repetitive thump, thump. 2 seconds, thump, 2 seconds. Someone was definitely up there. I approached the room where the noise was coming from. Just as I got close to the door, the banging stopped. Maybe they heard me coming. I called out that I was just exploring and meant no harm. I peeked into the dark room, flashlight off. It was almost pitch black, but I'm about 50% sure I saw a person near the back wall. The room reeked of feces. I pulled my head back out, looked at my flashlight, and then got ready to turn it back on, making sure not to point it directly inside. First, I aimed it down at the floor, then slowly raised it into the room. That's when I saw 2 pale, bare feet rushing toward me. Instinctively, I flicked the light higher and saw a woman with a bloodied forehead, her mouth hanging open, covered in some kind of yellow goo. It looked like something out of a nightmare. I ran as fast as I could. I could hear her screaming as I fled, and the screams weren't getting any quieter. She was chasing me. I bolted down the stairs, out of the building, and back to my car. Luckily, she didn't follow me that far. Once inside, I called my friend George, who's also into urban exploration. I had invited him to join me that night, but he wasn't able to. I told him what happened. We both came to a disturbing conclusion: that the banging sound I heard was her slamming her head against the wall, which would explain the bloody forehead. I asked him if I should call the police, just thinking out loud. He said, "Definitely not. That would be admitting to trespassing." I drove around a bit, trying to find a payphone to call the police anonymously, but of course, payphones are basically extinct now. In the end, I called the non-emergency line and reported a deranged woman at the motel, pretending I was not the one who saw her. I claimed I had just heard about it. I was as vague as possible and hung up quickly. I don't know if police ever investigated, but whatever was going on with that woman, she clearly needed help. She should have been in a psych ward or hospital, and in all my years of exploring, I've never encountered anything like that. These were tonight's stories. If any of them made you look twice into the darkness of your room, or reminded you of something you'd rather forget, then this channel has done its job. Leave a like. It's how we know you made it back in one piece. Subscribe and keep walking with us through the shadows. If you've watched all the way to the end, comment, "I saw it all." That's how we know who truly walks the night with us. And if you have a real story, something you've never had the courage to share, send it to the email you see on screen. You might just be the next to be remembered here.